Christus a enviat. So today I want to talk about an author who is thankfully still alive, a modern Romanian author called Razvan Petrescu. And the book I'd like to talk about is a collection of his short stories called Small Changes in Attitude. Small Changes in Attitude. And there it is in translation. It's actually a collection of his first three series of short stories or novella, because they vary. There is a concentration in all of his short stories. He's 63 years of age, and he's a writer, a dramatist, and an editor. He works at the editing house in Bucharest, the Curtea Veche. He was originally a doctor. He was born in Bucharest to a medical family. His father was a doctor. His mother was a medical assistant, and he trained as a medic and practiced as a doctor for 8 years, 3 years in hospital as a specialist, trainee specialist in Bucharest, and then as a GP. He worked for 5 years as a GP. He's acquainted with the French author Michel Simon, who described him as being like Céline, the famous French author Céline, whom Petrescu discovered reading literature at school. He offers no solutions in his stories, and there's a tragic, aged feeling about his tales. There's a black, absurdist humour in his work, but he manages to capture the vernacular and to capture the spirit of the golden age in some of his stories. His characters, the characters he uses in the stories in this collection, migrate between stories, so you'll meet them again. And there's a prophetic element to much of his work. He takes a scalpel to society, which is rather fitting given that he was formerly a doctor. I want to talk just briefly about a few of the stories in the collection. The first story you'll encounter is called Chance. And Chance relates the story in a rather beautiful way of three workers, road diggers, digging up a pipe to repair it. And they have lunch, and their lunch consists typically of tsuika, pork fat, onion, cheese, and bread. Tsuika being the Romanian equivalent for slivovitz or plum brandy, strong stuff. And they swig this down. And as they continue to dig for this pipe, one of them digs into a skull and finds a skull, and miraculously finds himself quoting from Hamlet. So the digging into the skull is almost an epiphany for these three workers who are shocked by their friend, whom they think has gone off his rocker because he starts quoting accurately from Shakespeare's play Hamlet. It's a short but telling tale. Other tales are linked in the themes that he deals with. There's a chilling tale called The Door of an ill man in hospital with his wife and daughter next door, and he will die, but the doctor doesn't know when he'll die, and they debate whether to take him home, because if they take him home they have to pay for a taxi, and they don't want him to die in the taxi on the way home. So should they leave him at the hospital, or should they take him home? Well, if they leave him at the hospital, the body won't be released for a while because they have to have an autopsy. And it's about them weighing up whether it's worth taking him home, and they feel increasingly bitter towards him because he's wasted their money. He hasn't made provision for a funeral. The funeral expenses and the cost of the meal at the funeral will be considerable, and they don't have that sort of money because he's wasted it. And They debate this, not realizing that the door to the sick man's room is open. It's a rather chilling tale about death, but death is a constant factor, not only in Romanian society, but in these tales. At the Bar is an interesting, a rather amusing tale about a village bar where the local drunks, which include everyone who lives in the village, those who've seen Mangalitsa or Las Fiabins will understand what I'm referring to. A village bar where everyone convenes, and they talk about the possible dangers from Chernobyl, from the radiation sickness that might emanate to their village from Chernobyl, and they're reporting at second, third hand what they know about radiation, what they know about Chernobyl. It is an amusing satire of village life in Romania. Then there are two stories, final stories, which I would link. One is called Black Encephalitis. Encephalitis is the flea-borne disease, prevalent, Japanese encephalitis, prevalent in Asia and the East, which leads to a swelling of the brain, which is what encephalitis means. And this black encephalitis is redefined as he goes through almost as a doctor in the short story, through the epidemiology, through the treatment, the frequency, and it turns out that this is a literary disease. The case histories relate to books that people have read, which can cause this illness, and changes to the brain, which can be seen after death and the dissection of the brain. So he goes through clinical presentations, case histories, literature, and black encephalitis is a reaction to literature. All the references, the literary references he puts through the text relate to literary figures. The final, rather chilling in our current situation, story is a short story, a very short story called Diary of a Flat Dweller, and I would describe it as being prophetic. It's the description of an apartment block where people are gradually dying and being taken away, and the narrator ends the story feeling ill himself as he's seen all the residents, all the tenants of this apartment block gradually being taken away in coffins or body bags. So a short but chilling tale from Dr. Razvan Petrescu, whom I can recommend his another story or novel he's written, Mandarina, the Mandarin. I can recommend that as well. Well worth a read. The most amusing tale, I think, of the five I've related is probably At the Bar, where Suika is regarded as being a remedy for ringworm, radiation, chickenpox, and perhaps coronavirus. And we learn from the president of Georgia that vodka will cure coronavirus. And I think Georgia is the only country, or is it Belarus? I may be mistaking the two. Certainly one of Belarus or Georgia are still allowing football matches and normal activity. We shall see. Anyway, worth reading. Razvan Petrescu, Small Changes in Attitude. Mulțumesc, la revedere și sănătate.